This is the Inner Chief Podcast, episode 391.
I was a very young manager. I was running a hospital, in a very significant hospital in my early 30s. And I think as a young leader, I thought that how you do that is being the smartest person in the room. And so having to try and be the smartest person in the room, what is that saying? If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. But it's a confidence thing. And so at some point I did get that insight that by attempting to be the smartest person in the room, attempting to always add value to somebody else's work, it wasn't necessarily helpful. It was not facilitating others' greatest contribution. In fact, it shuts people down.
G'day, this is the Inner Chief Podcast, episode 391 with Tracey Burton, Executive Director of Uniting in New South Wales and ACT on experiential learning, 360-degree feedback and the future of the health industry. I am your host, Greg Layton, founder of Chiefmaker and the Council of Chiefs. I believe there is a great chief in all of us, and that through listening to the stories, strategies, and techniques of great CEOs and gurus, each of you can find and leave your own legacy through your work and life. The Inner Chief Podcast is where you will learn how to think and make moves like a CEO, like a true chief. For over a decade, I've helped CEOs and senior executives around the world boldly lead change, inspire their people, and leave a legacy. On the Inner Chief Podcast, I bring these stories to life with deep diving CEO interviews, interspersed with minisodes covering key leadership challenges, so you will find your own path to greatness as an executive. In this episode, Chief, we replay a chat I had with Tracey Burton in 2019. Tracey has been the Executive Director of Uniting New South Wales, ACT, since April 2018. She has more than 35 years' experience in the Australian health and community services sector, including leadership roles at St John of God Healthcare, Ramsay Healthcare and St Vincent's Health Australia. In addition to her executive management roles, she has also served as a board director for aged care services, disability services in New Zealand and for a medical research foundation. Tracey holds a Bachelor in Health Administration, an MBA, and is a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. She's also done an executive program in negotiation at Columbia University in New York. In today's Best of Masterclass, Tracey will share why being the smartest person in the room won't help you lead, how to supplement formal education with experiential continuous learning, the do's and don'ts of 360 feedback and why it is so powerful. Chiefs, please welcome Tracey Burton. Well, I'm here with Tracey Burton, Executive Director for New South Wales and ACT of Uniting. Tracey, welcome to the Inner Chief Podcast.
Thank you, Greg. It's absolutely a delight to be here.
Tracey, we have a little tradition here at the Inner Chief. We love to know a bit about the background of our CEOs, MDs, executive directors. Can you tell us a bit of a story that sums up your childhood and early life?
Okay, well, I think I had a very lucky childhood. Grew up in suburban Sydney, one of 4 daughters. And then my dad got seconded to London, which caused our family to have a massive disruption, but for me, a massive adventure. I was 12. We got flown first class by Qantas. When we got there, we were on an English wage and we didn't have 2 cents to rub together or 2 pennies to rub together. It was a different way of living for 3 years. But for my family and for myself in the mid-70s, it was an amazing opportunity to make travel accessible. So when I was a teenager or, getting to that stage and my friends were desperate to go backpacking and all of that, I was so lucky that I'd already had some exposure to travel. So yeah, that probably sums it up quite well.
That's a big moment, isn't it? Yeah. And where was your favourite place as a teenager over in Europe?
Oh, well, we lived in Surrey and it was lovely. It really was a beautiful part of the world and a great sort of launch pad to so many other places, like to go and visit Paris and things.
Oh, yeah.
It's living in Australia, it's unimaginable that you can just pop over for a weekend, but yeah, you can.
So what was your first ever job?
When I was finishing high school, unemployment was at about 9%, and I was, really worried about, needing to have a job. And my dad was actually, he'd gone back to the UK and was living over there. And when he found out what my first real job was, he said I needed to stop it, because I was actually being a door-to-door salesperson for Encyclopedia Britannica.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you good?
No, it was a classic example of, I on my own time, I got all the training,
Yeah.
and then I knocked on some doors. And, I think even back then people recognized that encyclopedias weren't going to be the source of truth
Yeah.
for the future, and they were very expensive.
Yes.
I know we had a set of world books growing up.
Yeah.
But yeah, my dad found out about it and said, no daughter of mine will be doing door-to-door sales. So he was very determined that I would go to university. So off I went, and was lucky enough to be a full-time student at New South Wales doing a Bachelor of Health Administration. So,
Wow. Yeah. Door-to-door salesman. What a start.
I know.
Now, what was your first ever car? This is a very important question, by the way.
Is it really? I'm not a car person, but my first ever car was a 1969 Toyota Sprinter.
Oh, what a little ripper.
It was a little ripper. I inherited it from my sister. It served me well for a few years until it found itself sort of wrapped around a pole in an accident, which wasn't good, but we all survived. And happened to be the day that I had just bought my first brand new car. So I was going to be selling it anyway.
Let's get rid of this thing.
It was a Toyota Seeker. And would you believe it, I didn't think it was worth paying for air conditioning, because you had to pay extra for air conditioning back then when you bought a new car.
Yes.
And I chose not to.
No
How
air
dumb
conditioning.
was that?
Yes. In hot Australian summer, windows down.
Yes.
Well, that's good. Good little car history. I like that. Where did your career go from then? So you did health administration at university. You got your little Toyota Seeker. Where are you off to?
Was lucky enough to land a full-time management training program that was run by the Department of Health and the Professional College back then. It still exists now in a different format. It was fantastic because normally if you move jobs every 3 to 6 months, people think there's something wrong with you. But in a training program, I was moved to a different hospital, moved to a different department. And so I was doing really sort of frontline work and getting this incredible exposure and the opportunity to build a reputation very quickly, that I was someone who was, quite keen to learn and apply my skills. I must say, my first placement post-university, I believe that I learned more in the first 3 months in a real job than I had at 3 years of university, because all of a sudden I realised that the university piece had to a large extent been academic and for the sake of passing the exams, not for the real learning that you need to be good at your job.
Yeah. Were there any moments in those early days that have really stuck with you? Because you're still in health all these years later. What about it drew you to staying in health?
I really fell into it by mistake, or by not knowing, typical, 17, 18-year-old not knowing what to do. I loved biology, and my dad was an administrator, so health administration just made sense. I've just always loved that being part of healthcare is, especially as a leader in healthcare, that you get to motivate people in a space where they get to feel good about what they're doing anyway. Like, I think if I've never worked in a purely commercial enterprise, and how you motivate people to be excellent and bring themselves to that, I'm not sure. But in health and community services, people are doing good work anyway. So I think it's much easier to feel valued and motivated by what they're doing.
Did you have any setbacks in your career? Like anything that really stands out as a difficult moment?
Probably one that comes to mind is where I ended up in significant conflict with my boss. And I've always said no one ever want an argument with their boss or their owners. But I was a bit sort of trapped in the space and didn't recognise that for myself. And I was quite convinced that I was right. And I think in hindsight, I was right. But that wasn't of any use to me, sort of being in direct conflict. And I think the lesson I've learned, I sort of ended up being quite exhausted by it and sort of losing perspective, I think, in terms of that discomfort that comes with conflict like that. And so I think the lesson from it is that, if you're feeling that, you really should just step back and get out. It's not worth it. You come home distressed, so then it impacts your family. You're not sleeping well because it's an uncomfortable place to be, all of those things. So I think, be courageous and step away from it rather than gritting your teeth and bearing down and hanging on to what you think is right.
How long did you last before you made the move?
Couple of months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just became too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's some sage advice, because a lot of people get into really difficult situations with their boss, and it can become untenable. And this is an example where it was untenable for you. Okay, what about feedback? Have you ever had any feedback? It might have been stinging or whatever it was, but you knew the feedback was right and true, and therefore it really hit home for you. Have anything like that before?
Yeah, I think I can't exactly remember how I got the insight, but I got an insight, which was I was a very young manager. Like I was running a hospital in a very significant hospital in my early 30s. And I think as a young leader, I thought that the how you do that is being the smartest person in the room. And so having to try and be the smartest person in the room, what is that saying? If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. But it's a confidence thing. And so at some point I did get that insight that by attempting to be the smartest person in the room, attempting to always add value to somebody else's work, it wasn't necessarily helpful. It was not facilitating others' greatest contribution. In fact, it shuts people down. And so I think that awakening, that insight, probably through a 360, is probably, if I think back to the moment when I really sort of
Some written
crystallized
feedback through a 360 review.
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's always some gems in 360. And,
Yeah.
and I think I was just at that stage as well that I could recognize that that's not the role of the leader. No, the role of the leader is to facilitate others, and you do shut people down.
So I see that a lot, and I'm sure everybody is seeing that there's a person in the business, maybe even we're guilty of it ourselves, where we need to feel like contribute to something everybody says, or every person says something, we want to contribute to it. How have you adjusted your style? What do you do that's different now to before?
I try and have that framework of ask, don't tell. But I think sometimes when you've been, you've had a lot of experience and you've seen it before, the temptation is just, this is how you fix it,
Yes.
But actually just asking enough questions is the right framework. I don't think I master it all the time at all, but a consciousness is at least the main, a good start. Just when I have the opportunity of recruiting people into a team that I'm working in or leading, finding the greatest talent and welcoming that and boosting them and, putting them up front and, making sure that they're given the opportunity to present their own work, not have it done through me. That type of, promoting, grabbing hold of the best people and promoting and growing
And
them.
celebrating how good they are.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think sometimes leaders can get a bit threatened by smart people. If you're in a room full of smart people, you can maybe start to question, should I be here? Do I belong? Maybe they'll get more credit than I will. But the great leaders actually celebrate that. And it's a wonderful mindset you bring into the table because that transforms. Does it make you feel calmer and like you enjoy work more?
I think so. And it also makes you feel like you're not alone as you make these decisions. Like I've just made a really significant recruitment decision and it was difficult because, we had these wonderful candidates and how could we choose? Knowing that I didn't have to make that decision by myself, I actually had some of my other executive team members participate in that process. It really strengthened the quality of the decision and it really made it easier for me to ultimately it was my decision. But that shared leadership piece, I think, really valuable.
Now, Chief, do you want to take your game to a new level or that of your people? Our mini MBA in leading high performance teams now has the highest NPS of any mini MBA style program in Australia at 91. Why? Because when you do the program, you get immediate and tangible performance improvement. You get dedicated time working on the business as opposed to away from it. We have a practical, real-world approach where we teach frameworks that you implement in your business as we go, and then you share and learn with your peers and with me as your coach. So the cost benefit is immediate, right? The weekly coaching sessions are live and you get a chance to ask questions direct to me and of your peers. And the time management is completely achievable because you're only spending a couple of hours a week on this at max, and those 2 hours are actually working on the business. So if you want to add something that really changes your game, that helps you become a real master of transformation and change and to inspire your people and love your job, check out chiefmaker.com/mini MBA. From a career or leadership perspective, what's the most difficult decision you've ever had to make?
Again, probably leaving. Like everywhere that I've been, I've ended up really loving the organization, loving the team of people that I'm with. And so it's never been easy to move on. But I've sort of typically, moved originally sort of every 4 or 5 years, and then I went 6 years, then 7. But one time I was in a position where I really did need to leave because I was in conflict with the way the organization was going. And I was being really affected personally, and then, taking it home with me, and sort of being a bit of a very sad person at home as well, because I felt that as this organization was going through some massive change, my team was just being really sort of sidelined and not valued for the contribution that they'd made and what they're capable of making to a bigger picture. So it was sort of like a big change agenda,
Sure.
where individual institutions were coming together under a single umbrella. And so I really felt that it wasn't for me because of the sort of the shift in the values and the approach that was being taken to this change. But the idea of leaving the team that I had nurtured and been part of, and we'd done so much good work together, abandoning them to that, because I was their leader and sort of there defending them, which was exhausting. Abandoning them was one of the hardest decisions I could ever make. But that conflict between what I was being asked to lead and where my personal values was just too great.
Too great. Yeah.
So I did decide to leave, and it was very, very difficult. But in the end, life goes on, and people are all right, and some of them stayed and did well, and some of them left, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes I think we make, again, possibly when you're younger as well, you sort of see these things as just impossible hurdles that there'll never be a recovery from, and there always is.
Such an important point. I was only talking to someone the other day who had an individual in their business who was an absolute rock star, so I was getting results, but was a bit toxic across the organization, and they were just so conflicted. What do they do with this individual? And they had some hard words with them and tried to work out a result, and then in the end, the person self-selected to leave. They were so worried about the impact in the market and what was going to happen. No one was worried at all. In fact, they uncovered all this amazing gold and potential underneath. And so they say anything, they built it up into such a big worry that it actually wasn't. And the organisation continues to thrive if it's got a role to play, right?
Yeah, absolutely. After I left that position, I went to a place where I was actually part of the leadership team that was driving a change like that.
Well,
and I looked at the CEOs that were being impacted, and I could see myself in their shoes. I was not capable of actually leading that change that was going to disassemble something, and I'd put 4 or 5 years into building up. But I did observe one of the leaders in this new organisation where I went, that he absolutely said, yep, I've spent my last X years building this up, but I can see for the greater good, or I can see the reality that this is the direction that the organisation is going to take in change. And I did see him successfully lead his organisation into a sort of a significant disassembling of what they'd done as a fiefdom to make them part of a bigger organisation. And I really, really was, I really admired his ability to do that, and could recognise, looking back, my inability to have done that at that time. So,
have you had any great mentors over your career?
one in particular comes to mind. His name is Ravi, and he was someone who, I guess, he recognised that I had potential to be a leader. And he really sort of was like a bit of a thorn in my side about, you need to go and do some more formal study, because I hadn't done anything post my bachelor degree for 12 or 13 years. Sort of, you're learning on the job all the time. I had a young family, all of those things, fulfilling executive roles. How do you make the time for it? So he really nudged me to give it a go, and I started gently with the Australian Institute of Company Directors course. This is going back 20-something years. And then that was a lovely, gentle way to be reintroduced to formal study, and then slowly sort of signed up for the grad cert that turned into the MBA. And I actually took me 7 years to do my MBA, because I was really trying to enjoy the journey and get as much out of the learning rather than just get to the destination. So it worked really well for me to do it slowly as I worked. And and he's constantly at me always about learning, and sends me a Harvard Business Review article. And so that he is a great mentor to help me recognize the importance of renewal and that fresh thinking.
Yeah, renewal, that's a great word, right? One of the questions I've got there is about continuous education and higher education. And I think you just made a really important point is in the market for MBAs in particular, we had a CEO a while back who said, for MBAs, about 1/3 of people benefit, 1/3 of people make no change in their life, 1/3 of people, it's actually negative because they feel like they deserve more afterwards. But there is clearly a way to make your work better, enjoy your career, improve yourself if you follow a certain pathway to the way you engage with an MBA. Your method of spreading it out so you could learn, that's one method. Is there any other tips you'd give to people who are thinking about an MBA to make it, like, get your return on investment is number one, right? How do you really get the most out of one?
Well, I started my MBA at UCQ because I was in Queensland at the time and finished it when I came back to Sydney through AGSM. And I was a bit hesitant about the AGSM model because at the end of it, there's a significant component where you have to do group work and you go through as a cohort for the year. And I was like, oh, do I have the time for that? Is that, I don't really like group assignments, all of those things. But in the end, I got to be in a cohort of about 40 people from all walks of life. Most of them were younger than me. In fact, I think all bar one was younger than me and all bar one was from outside of health. And we spent significant time together through the format that they have. And that network, that opportunity to engage like that, offered me so much value that I hadn't recognized. And so we ended up in syndicates of smaller groups, and I'm still in close contact with one of those syndicate members. And as a cohort, 9 years now, we still occasionally get together and certainly can reach out to each other as a network of people. So that was great.
Yeah.
But I think, so it's the people piece. If you're going to be in that classroom, however you do it, making sure that you do connect. Because the first part of my MBA, I was always late to enroll in the class. So I always got the Wednesday evening class at 8 o'clock and I'd rock up at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, 8 till 9:30. And I just wanted to get in there, get the learnings and get out again. And I missed a lot of the value on the journey until that end stage. So I'd really encourage people to look around the room and find a way of connecting with others.
At what point in someone's career should they do an MBA?
Really depends, because it is a big, well, if you can do it slowly, and then it's not the big burden that it is. But even for me, it meant every Saturday my husband had to take our kids who were sort of mostly teenagers and things, and it's quite expensive. We started with rabbit hutches and we ended with motorbikes. So it was quite an expensive thing to keep them occupied while I did it. But so you're fitting it around your family and your work obligations is important. I don't think you can leave it too late either because it's almost become a prerequisite now. It really has. So, but then the challenge is, how do you keep learning after that? You finish the MBA, well, then what do you do?
What is your now preferred method of learning?
Experiential learning is just, for me, it's just fantastic. Learning about uniting. We just had this amazing interaction with some of our staff and our board where instead of having a PowerPoint presentation about how the service works, we actually took on a persona and we sat in the chair and we were the client. And experienced the service, and that was a fantastic way to learn. But in terms of getting input, industry input, it's a variety of things. I was lucky enough to do a short course at Columbia, and it was on negotiation, and that was experiential as well. I got to practice my negotiation skills with someone from Russia who learnt nothing about the whole concept of negotiation, which is, you want the orange peel, I want the orange, and if we work that out, we both win. Yeah. Her model was no matter what, you had to have the entire orange. So the thousands of dollars of course fees were wasted on her, but it really, there were people there from the Netherlands and a gentleman, from Mexico who'd lived in Denmark for the last 20 years. And so the insights that I got by being in a room with people who had completely different frames of reference to my own was amazing. So something like a short course like that can be fantastic. Last week I was at a conference down in Melbourne, an aged care conference, and I got so much out of that by, going to the trade stalls and getting these people to show me their latest technology. And they're typically sort of young and incredibly passionate and doing really clever things. So it can happen in lots of forms. Yeah.
Superb. What about overwhelm or staying focused? You lead a very interesting business. It's very complex. It's got incredible challenges in an industry that's transforming and huge amount of demand and technology change. How on earth do you manage to stay focused and calm and present like you are right now and make time for things like this? How do you do that?
I'd have to say I'm still mastering it. I've lived my career working stupid hours and giving up a lot. That's just how I've always done it. And I've just had my 360 here, and my team are telling me that it's okay. I can really do more work through them and perhaps spend more time with them directly to support their success. So intellectually I know that, but those damn emails come through and I'm so, I get, they're easy to deal with. But yeah, I think it takes a lot of discipline and awareness.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can't say I get it right all the time.
We mentioned 360-degree feedback twice now, and you're still getting it. And I think that's a magnificent thing to do. Absolutely vital. Someone is sitting there going, you know what, it's either been a long time or I've never had 360-degree feedback. What advice would you give them about how to go about it and get it done?
My advice would be to think really carefully about the categories that you're going to have. So peers and people who work for you, people that work for them. I've got two bosses. So getting feedback from both of them. So thinking really carefully about that, and then getting a good number of voices into each category.
Yes.
It's a big burden on people who are going to fill it in for you. But if you only get 3 or 4 voices versus 8 or 9 in each of those categories, you can miss out on some of the richness. And then I think the important thing is to be brave, sit down with the people who gave you the feedback and be transparent about what you've learned and what you're going to try and do with it.
Yes.
So I've actually sat with my team members and said, look, I've heard this message that by being available to so many others, I'm not necessarily available enough to you. And the success of the organisation actually is through them. And so then that puts me in a position of being accountable to them to make that change as well. So it doesn't just sit with me. I'm asking them to hold me to account to that as well. So, yeah.
Do you think 360 feedback is best anonymous or with a name applied to it?
I think it's anonymous. Yeah. But you need to know what sphere it's coming from.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And certainly your boss, your boss, that'll always be fully transparent and should be. Yeah. But everything else, I think it's helpful to be anonymous.
Okay. So let's imagine there's someone in the middle layers of an organisation. For whatever reason, they sort of feel like they've lost their love for work. Maybe they're just a bit stalled, but they're just thinking, I need something more out of my career. What advice would you give them to put a rocket back into what they're doing?
Definitely say yes to any opportunity. Like, you might be busy and so like this project's coming up, or you can see that. And so offering yourself up to get involved with something so that you've got a learning opportunity and a prove yourself opportunity. So I've been very lucky. I've had in my career, I've had people say, could you come and do this? And often, particularly when I was younger, I'd sort of go, oh, I don't know that I could do that, but wow, do you think I could do that? And it's somebody else believing in me. So trying to find those opportunities to do something a bit different. So I don't think there's any way around the sheer hard work of it. So it might impact your family that on Saturday afternoon you're working on this damn project, but hopefully you're getting something out of it and you're getting some learning. So that you'll have to put something into it to get something more back. And maybe it's not at work. Maybe it is go and sign up to some postgraduate study and get a shot in the arm that way and meet a new network of people. So just do something. And if it's really that bad, if you really have stalled, if you're in the situation, if you're lucky enough to be in a situation where you could be brave and step away, step out and take a break. Because if I hadn't been on a break when this job came up, because this is quite different from acute healthcare where I've been, this is community services, this is aged care. And, the headhunter would have rung me up and I would have said, oh, no, I do health.
Yes.
But instead I went, oh, well, yeah, I'll have a look at that. And when I looked at it, I was just so excited about the opportunity of coming to a different part of the sector, still being of service to others, but using my skills and talents, developed in another place. And for me to get to learn again, it's a big journey. Learning, I think, I've seen the tip of the iceberg absolutely in terms of understanding how aged care works, how community services work, but it's been amazing. So, but getting a new job, getting a new full-time job in a new place is a full-time job. So sort of staying in a place where you're feeling stalled and having the capacity to really genuinely put the effort it takes into finding the next thing, that can be quite difficult. Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to talk more about that in a second, but you did mention something about 2 minutes ago, and it was finding opportunity to prove yourself. And those 2 words, prove yourself, is about track record? Have you done something that has made a measurable, clear difference in the organisation you work for? How important is that?
It can be really hard, because a lot of the work that we do is just day in, day out. It doesn't have a beginning and end point. And that's
Yes.
where a project or a tender or some sort of a key report that's got to hit a deadline. And so, it's about building people's awareness that you're someone that will put in the extra mile and that can be relied on. Yeah.
Superb. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a bit about where you are now in uniting. And as you said, there's this theme coming through in the way you're talking about this consistent learning and having to grow yourself and you as you say, a different part of this sector. This piece about how you prepare, you said trying to find a new job can be a full-time job. So how did you prepare yourself for going for this job, getting your own assets and story in line? How did you do that?
I actually had some coaching, which I'd never done in that space before, that sort of career coaching. And I signed up for some classes around learning about how LinkedIn works. And, I sort of just became a bit of a sponge because I had the time to do it as well.
Yes.
And then I just deeply researched Uniting, but also the Uniting Church. I hadn't realised I'd been working in Catholic healthcare for quite a long time.
Sure.
And that was my exposure to church since I was a kid. To find the Uniting Church is what it is, which is this amazing church that literally welcomes you exactly as you are. Be you an atheist, be you a Buddhist, whatever, they're not going to judge you. It is a church that is really committed to social reform, will speak out on controversial issues. It's a surprising church that really, is trying to make the world a better place. Instead of being a church for itself, it is a church to try and make the world a better place. So researching the church and then, just deeply talking to some people about Uniting, reading everything I could in advance to be sure that it might be a fit and that my skills might be of use here. And I've been here nearly 18 months now, and I think the transferability of the skills from the acute healthcare sector to here has been good. It's worked.
So what's the biggest challenge the business faces now, and how have you gone about working out how to make the change?
Well, the largest thing that Uniting does is aged care, and everyone's aware of the challenges of the aged care system. And I'm just amazed at how challenging it is. In Australia, we only spend 1% of our gross domestic product on aged care. You get what you pay for. So fundamentally, I think all Australians want to be proud of the care that's available for senior Australians. Most people want it in their home, but the availability of funded home care is really small. So a lot of people do end up in residential aged care, we used to call them nursing homes. We now call them residential aged care. And, I think we'd all want at least a 3 or 4 star service for our older Australians.
Sure.
But if you fund something at 1 or 2 star, it's impossible to produce 4 star in the long run. So Australia, I'm hoping the Royal Commission is really going to wake Australians up to some of the big systemic problems. And hopefully, just as we did when NDIS came about, like I pay a lot of tax, but when I understood NDIS, I didn't mind paying a bit more tax if it meant that people with a disability and their families were going to get support. It wasn't just going to fall to them, but we all as Australians could help with that. And I just hope that the Royal Commission will make us wake up that as Australians, we want our older people to have access to great care, and someone's going to have to pay for that. It can't be the government on its own. People who can afford to pay need to pay. So there's a really big social agenda that can come, or it could just get parked again, which would be so sad if we just have this effort of a Royal Commission and this point of focus if we can't get some change. So for me, that's something that's really important. I'm trying to link up with other leaders in aged care now that I've been here over a year and I'm starting to really understand it. Hoping that we can join up and help the community understand that change is really needed, and then hopefully government will act.
Talk about change and leading organisational change. You've obviously led a lot of change programs over the years and improved and transformed business of all types. What's the secret to that? Because that's hard. And let's be honest, a lot of change programs and organisations, from ASX-listed companies to not-for-profits to government organisations. A lot of it doesn't quite work out as we all hoped and planned. So what's the secret to making that work?
I think the why of the change, has to be really compelling and has to, stand up against the scrutiny. So even if people can't, they can see that it's going to impact them negatively. They can, hopefully there's a good enough argument that say, look, I don't agree with it, but I can see the why. So you can't always get consensus, but a really compelling reason before you go and disrupt a structure or a business or whatever it is that you're doing. There has to be in this day and age with so much going on and the need to prioritise, there has to be a really strong why.
Yeah. Okay, so what does the future hold then in this health sector? What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge for it going forward?
Health and community services in Australia is of a very high standard. I think we can be really, really proud of it. I think the aged care sector and some of the community services part, it is just going to need more funding. If we talk about community services for a minute and health as well to a degree, if we spent more money on the prevention side, like say, one of the services that we provide is care for young people and children who need foster homes. If we could be spending more money up front and trying to hold those families together, the outcomes for those young people and children are, really much, much more likely to be positive. Unfortunately, the state has to spend a fortune in helping these people where the family's already broken down. It's too late. So we're spending money in the reactive thing. It's a bit like, if we could spend the money and stop people from smoking, well, that's better than spending the money in cancer treatment. So, but for a while, the government has to pay twice. They've got to invest in the prevention, but they can't just abandon the people who are already trapped in the cycle of disadvantage that's got them there. So it's a real dilemma. And I think in Australia, we have to start having more conversations about what do we really want. Every healthcare dollar, every aged care dollar, every community service dollar is precious. How can we apply it for the best outcome rather than just, continuing to follow on and do what we've always done?
We were saying before we started recording that one thing you're incredibly proud of, and I share that pride, is that here in Oz we have one of the best public health systems in the world, rivals the very best anywhere. And you can, as you said, if you're going to have a heart attack, you can go to hospital and get world-class care basically for free on the spot as you need it. How do we get people to recognise how good our health system is? Because I think it's a remarkable thing. If you've travelled around the world, you realise how good we've got. Is there something we need to do about helping people realise how good our system is?
I guess people find out. Well, people have their horror stories as well.
Of course,
they were kept waiting too long in the emergency department, or there was a misdiagnosis and something. So errors do happen, but by world standard, there's no question about it. And it's a good value system. We spend less than 10% of GDP on our health system, whereas somewhere like America spends, 15, 16, 18%, and millions of people have no access. So somehow it's about the media, helping to tell the good stories. The media is a product of who we are. We thrive on negative stories, but how do we as a community push back against that? Don't just, for every one negative story, could you please go find 3 positives?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't it be nice? Because there's some lovely stories in aged care as well. Amazing things happen. But the media really grabs hold of the awful stories and then frightens people. Like people are afraid to go into aged care. I've been amazed coming into Uniting and into aged care that when I have visited, for official functions and a resident has gotten up to spoke twice, I've heard it from out of the mouths of residents where they're talking about love. They talk about the sense of love at the place and I've had a resident's mother sort of stop me in the car park and tell me about this wonderful story of relationship and compassion. And that's not the bit that we must be interested in, because if the media's, but how can we stand up and say, well, no, sorry, we want to start to change that narrative and be grateful, have an attitude of gratitude instead of this perpetuating the fear and the negativity. I'm not sure.
That'd be wonderful.
Start by
Problem to
talking about
solve,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Let's talk more about it. Tell some great stories like this.
Yeah.
All right, Chiefs, more from Tracey Burton in a minute. Now, recently we had Dr. Carmel Harrington, executive sleep guru, on the show. We spoke about reducing dementia risk and the myths and factors of sleep that drive optimal health joy and performance. Here's what Carmel had to say about critical sleep process.
When we sleep, our brain cells retract by about 50%, and it allows our spinal fluid to wash over our brain, and it cleanses our brain, which is like having a shower at the end of the day, which is great. And importantly, it gets rid of this metabolite called beta amyloid peptide. Now, this peptide is a very sticky protein, and it forms clumps or plaques in the brain, and these plaques are implicated in the Alzheimer dementia process. Now, these plaques form up to 20 years prior. So if we're not getting enough sleep on a regular basis, we really do suffer the consequences later on.
You can listen to that incredible conversation with Dr. Carmel Harrington by going to chiefmaker.com/389. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the podcast and check out all the other great interviews with our chiefs and gurus, as well as all the mini-sodes by going to chiefmaker.com/listen now. Righto, Chiefs, let's get back to our best of series with Tracey Burton. Okay, we've got some closing questions that we ask all our great chiefs on the show. What's the number one book you recommend for professionals of all types?
Well, that's a really hard question because I think it depends. It really does depend. I suffered from imposter syndrome for a long time. And so reading a book that helps you understand that there's a little voice in your head that you can turn off and, that can make a huge difference to someone's life. But and the recency effect, I'd love to tell you about this one that I've read recently from Paul Mitchell at the Human Enterprise. It's called Your Leadership Diamond. And it's a great book about the balance and actually, don't beat yourself up all the time, but lead in your personal life as lead as a person, lead as your team, lead in your community. Just real little pearls of wisdom. But I think it just depends.
Yes. Tell me what you read so you had imposter syndrome. What was the book you read that helped you get over that?
Oh, it's on my bookshelf and it's got yellow. It's sort of like a spirituality book actually that my sister gave me. And the whole book wasn't necessarily useful to me, but this section about so I'll dig it off my bookshelf and email it to you.
Please, that would be wonderful because an enormous number of people ask me about imposter syndrome. How do you beat it? What's the cause? Because it's hard to know. Like even someone I had coffee with earlier today who was a managing director of a major organisation is now in a sort of a similar role in an even bigger organisation. Says, I think I've gone beyond my limit. And that's what they all say.
That's right. Like Harvard mathematicians, think that they're going to get caught out.
That's right. They're waiting for someone to find out.
Yeah, it's a terrible waste of energy, and I think it is a confidence and a maturity thing, and that second guessing yourself is just such an unhelpful thing. Because even if you make a decision and you make a mistake, well, you can recognise it was a mistake and fix it, change it. It's very rare that you make a mistake that you can't go back and revisit.
That's right.
So
what's the next thing in your life you're most excited about?
That's a hard one. I was just incredibly excited about setting up a surprise for my husband's 60th birthday.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah, we got to surprise him on a cruise to nowhere with the whole family and made his day. So doing family stuff is always lovely. But I am optimistic and hopeful that we can make a difference in the aged care, in this time ahead with aged care. I am excited, probably daunted, but really optimistic that change can happen here. I'm also excited that change can happen for Aboriginal people in the not too distant future as well. I feel that there's a real movement in Australia, an awakening to the need for treaty and sovereignty and truth telling, and that excites me as well.
What's the best way for people to connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn, so that's the best way. I can't say I'm a master of LinkedIn, even though I did do that class. It's a matter of finding the time to do it, but it's a great place to to learn and so that would be my guess.
Can you nominate another CEO you hold with great respect you think should come on the Inner Chief?
Thinking about that, and there's a few, but there's a lady by the name of Sue Shilbury in Victoria who's running the Austin Health. And Sue might be a person. I've just recently had some detailed conversations with her and was really inspired by her leadership style and her, again, not trying to be the smartest person in the room, but her facilitation of others. And I think that's a great leadership skill.
Wonderful. We'll try and track down Sue in Melbourne. Now, if you could lead any company or organisation in the world other than where you are right now, what would it be?
Well, if the answer is right now, I actually can't think of anywhere else other than Uniting.
Okay, in 5 years' time.
In 5 years' time, I definitely would like to be thinking about participating in something smaller, something small, because I'd love to find room in my life to be what my mother-in-law was to my kids, and that's, an active grandmother and a support to my kids. Finding something that's still connected to community, a way to give back, but isn't all consuming, as a role like this would be something that I'd really love to do.
Nice. What is a final message of wisdom and hope you think is vital for the next generation of executives?
I think it's about working in a place that you love, in a space that you're going to love. Because if you don't love it, it's really hard to be authentic about it. Non-authenticity is spotted a mile off, and it takes a lot of energy to fake it. So I think that's probably the most important thing. And that might require you to really examine what you're doing and maybe make a brave decision to try something different.
Tracey Burton, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Inner Chi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Righto, Chiefs. That sums it up for this week. And the remarkable Tracey Burton, 40 years leading incredible healthcare businesses and all the lessons there for you. Chief, I hope you enjoyed that session. Tracey is truly inspiring. Chief, all the links and resources for this episode can be found at chiefmaker.com/391. And if you would like to stay in touch and hear all about some of the best resources you can find anywhere in the world to improve your performance at work, go to chiefmaker.com/subscribe. Now, Chief, if you're yet to rate the episode and subscribe, I hope you'll do so soon. It helps others see the magnificent value that the chiefs and gurus bring to their life and career. So make sure you hit subscribe on your podcast app now, give it a 5-star rating if you think it's worthy, and leave a short review about your favourite episode. Righto, Chiefs, as always, remember to stay epic.